Staying in God's boundaries, society tells us that that's restrictive. Oh, you can't live the way you want if you're gonna follow God. It's not a restriction. It helps you to concentrate. It gives you focus. It leads you to abundant life. Setting God's boundaries, it brings meaning and it brings purpose. Peter is willing to acknowledge that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. He's willing to say that and he's happy about that. But what Peter doesn't understand is what that statement means. What does it mean that Jesus is the Christ? That means that Jesus is going to have to walk an incredibly difficult path ahead. Peter wanted Jesus to be the Messiah. He was happy about that. But Peter wanted Jesus to do the things that Peter thought the Messiah should do. He wanted him to be more Messiah-y in his eyes. He didn't want to do it the way that God had drawn it up. Peter wanted to make a classic vampire move. It's something we need to really watch out for. Because people will try to manipulate you, claiming to give you something, to give you life, but they're actually taking it from you. Because from the outside, what we see, Peter's trying to keep Jesus safe. That's Peter's will. The idea that Jesus could die is just absurd to him. That's not what Messiah is supposed to do. Peter had a vision of Jesus, storming the gates of Rome. He wanted Jesus to ascend to an earthly throne, to take command. Peter saw Jesus as the one who slipped on the one ring, who pulled the sword from the stone. That's what Peter wanted. Peter is, in essence, telling Jesus, don't be dumb. Don't do what God has put in front of you. Don't do the whole messy cross thing. Trust me instead. It's actually literally the oldest trick in the book. Actually, if you look back in the Bible at the first book and you look for the first trick, this is it. Because what does Satan say to Eve in the garden? He calls what God said into question. Did God really say not to eat of the tree in the garden? Did he really say that? Why don't you try it? It'll make you like him. Peter is here saying, Jesus, don't die. Choose life. And Jesus is thinking, man, Peter, you don't get it. I'm choosing more life than you can ever imagine. See, Jesus' reaction, it isn't just oriented to put Peter in his place to say, Peter, yo, man, you're the disciple, I'm Jesus. That's not what's happening here. Jesus is making sure that this vampire bite isn't going to penetrate the skin. Because Jesus knows that Peter's line of thinking is in opposition to God's will. It was the same thing when Satan tempted Jesus in the desert. Oh, put your trust in me, Jesus. Just bow down and worship me and I'll give you the kingdoms of the world. Jesus, just trust me. I will raise you up. Follow me instead of your father's will. So that same temptation is now, we're hearing it echoed through the lips of Peter. So Jesus wasn't hearing the words of a loving disciple trying to keep him safe. Jesus was like, I know I've heard this line of thinking before. He was hearing Satan. And he responded accordingly. See, that same temptation, though, is present for us all the time. The sweet, attractive sounding voice of society saying, hey, just give me your Sundays. Give me your weekends. Spend them on you. Relax. Enjoy yourself all weekend. You work hard all week. Just don't do the church thing. Give society your time. Give society your resources. Follow the trends. Trust it instead of Jesus. Don't go God's way. That's hard. It hurts. It's restrictive. It isn't safe. Put your life in my hands, which is actually society saying, put your life in your own hands. Trust your own understanding. And then you can really live it up. I think sometimes vampires use the language of the enemy and they don't even know it, because they really just, in their minds, they're saying, I want you to have a good time. I think you're stressed out. I want you to have a good time. I want you to be safe. I want you to be comfortable. So come, do what I'm doing because it works. They think it does. They want you to keep safe. Or sometimes it's more sinister, because sometimes they want to validate their lifestyle by bringing you along for the ride. And that's why you got to prepare now. You got to take action now so that you are ready when the time comes, so that you are ready when you need to be. And here's how we're going to do it. We're going to walk through a few things. Here we go. First of all, we're going to define boundaries, then live according to them. Now, I'm going to say it because a lot of times we hear the first part and we don't listen to the second part. I've been there. We've heard it before. Define your boundaries, but then also live according to them. Because if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to set boundaries according to his example. It's the only way you can do it and stay sane. In Luke 16, Jesus tells us that we can't serve many masters. We can have a lot of hobbies, we can have a lot of interests. One master, one leader, one Savior that guides our purpose in life. Now, if you're going to follow that, if you want to be in that lifestyle, that Christian lifestyle, you need to be bold. Because if you want to stay on track and you don't want people to suck the life out of you, you need to understand that there is a relationship between your boundaries and your purpose and abundant life. That's how you set your boundaries, because you know that your purpose, the one that God has put in front of you, will get you to abundant life. You have to understand that, and it's going to take boldness to live it out. Rick Warren once wrote this: without God, life has no purpose. And without purpose, life has no meaning. And without meaning, life has no significance or hope. And if I can add a question to Rick there, what kind of life is that? And he's not alone. Solomon in the Bible said something similar in Ecclesiastes 2. And if you're not familiar, Solomon was a man of just incredible wealth and power and wisdom. He was probably one of the most powerful men in all of history. You could stack him up against anybody. He could influence the world. And he did. Yet he came to understand that all the things he chased, with all that power and wealth, the guy that could do anything he wanted, it was meaningless. He was chasing the wind. He was still empty without other things. By the end of the book, he actually realizes that keeping God's commandments, that's the thing that brought him purpose. That's the thing that kept him on track. It should be the chief pursuit of man, is what he says. Staying in God's boundaries, society tells us that that's restrictive. Oh, you can't live the way you want if you're going to follow God. It's not a restriction. It helps you to concentrate. It gives you focus. It leads you to abundant life. Setting God's boundaries, it brings meaning and it brings purpose. Now, maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you're listening today and you're like, man, I still think it's restrictive. That's okay. It's a faith journey. We get there. But if you are a Christian or you're trying to become one, you're trying to live like one, and you accept that there's truth to this, that living for God's purpose is the only way to live and find meaning and purpose. If you accept that that might be true, it means you're going to have to define boundaries in ways that will protect your purpose and lead to abundant life. That's going to mean telling other people where your boundaries are, and that's uncomfortable. You might have some weird conversations. Yeah, hey, I know that you see nothing wrong with hanging out at the club at 2 a.m., but I know the kinds of stuff that happens at that club at 2 a.m., and that is not the stuff that will keep me on my purpose. Yeah, boss, I know. This looks like a great promotion. This would be great upward mobility. It'd be a great thing for me to do for the company. But the 70-hour works are going to take way too much time from my family. The 70-hour weeks are just too much. Yeah, I know you want me to be embroiled in this political discussion. You want me to take a side. You want me to be persuaded. But we're not discussing the issues anymore. We're just taking sides and hurting each other. And I'm not going to be part of that. See, I want to live at peace with all men as much as it depends on me. Let people know where your boundaries are. Because if you consistently live out your purposes and you tell people consistently, this is where my boundaries are, we're not doing this, this is my boundary. If you are consistent, something strange will happen. The vampires that come to attack you, they're gonna get freaking bored because they're gonna keep getting the same answer from you. It will be no fun to attack you there. They might do it, but you're gonna have your shields up. You're gonna have built a boundary. You're gonna have established something that will protect you. But the whole key to the thing you gotta do is you've gotta live in that boundary. You can't just say you have it and then do what you want. You gotta live there. Matthew 5:37 in fact says, simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. If your boundary is that you're never gonna get drunk because you've done some pretty awful things while you're intoxicated, and then your friends start to pressure you and you say, hey man, you gotta, just get drunk, just relax. Guess what you need to do? Let your no be no. And your no needs to stay no long enough so that they understand that you are trying to live differently. Not because you don't like them, but because you need to live differently. If your boundary is that you're not gonna gossip, because gossip's been a problem, and then your coworker, takes the jumper cables and jump starts the rumor mill, are you gonna be the person where gossip goes to die? Is that how you're gonna be? Are you gonna have the strength to do that? Is that where your boundary is going to be? See, the key to all this again is consistency. It requires consistency. Maintain your boundaries. And some of you are thinking, well, if I do that, I'm gonna lose some friends. Some people aren't gonna hang out with me anymore. And that may be true, and maybe it won't be true, but let me just ask you, if you lose a friend because you wouldn't step outside your boundary, was that a friendship that was actually helping you in the things you're pursuing, or was it hurting you? So your friendships may change. In fact, you might actually find some people moving closer to your boundaries because they say, oh, you're focused and you're going somewhere. I'd like to be part of that. You might even make up some new friends here. You might link up with some new people. And that's because your life is becoming more focused, not restricted, focused. But if you don't have boundaries, if you don't establish those, you're gonna be chasing the wind, chasing your own desires, and you're gonna be vampire bait. And every vampire on earth is gonna come for you because they're gonna see that you are a person who doesn't have those things that restrict them from attacking you. They're gonna persuade you to do this, they're gonna pressure you to do that, manipulate you, abuse you, and each bite's gonna do massive damage that's gonna be harder and harder to recover from. Stay true to your purpose, set your boundaries, and live by them.